So, what happens when a super sharp comedian sits down with, well, maybe the most famous spiritual guru on the planet? We are going to deconstruct Hassan Minhaj's incredible interview with Deepak Chopra to really get to the bottom of some of his most fascinating and, let's be honest, controversial ideas.
Okay, let's dive right in. Hassan kicks things off with a brilliant test. He asks both the real Deepak and an AI clone of Deepak the exact same question: explain my lateness using quantum physics. The real Deepak's answer? Hilariously blunt: you're a lazy guy. The AI, though, gives this flowery, cosmic answer about quantum fluctuations. And that right there, that's the perfect setup. What we think Chopra is versus the man himself.
You know, that one little test really frames the whole conversation. Forget the AI for a second. Who is the real Deepak Chopra? How does a medical doctor become this global wellness icon, building an empire on ideas that, frankly, challenge everything we think we know about reality? I mean, you really can't overstate his influence. He's the guy who took ancient ideas like meditation and holistic health and made them mainstream in the West. And we're not just talking about books, though there are over 80 of them. He's built this whole brand, complete with meditation apps and, as we just saw, his very own AI chatbot.
So how did he pull it off? How did he build this massive empire? Well, it all starts with challenging our most basic assumption, that the reality you see around you is actually real. Hassan dives right into this with a spiritual rapid-fire session. Let's get into it. Hassan starts with, just a small one. The question that has been at the heart of philosophy and religion for thousands of years: what is the real root cause of all our pain and suffering?
And Chopra's answer is pure Chopra. He says our suffering isn't because of bad things happening to us. It's because of an illusion inside us. This deeply ingrained belief that we are these isolated individuals, totally separate from everyone and everything else. Okay, so if our own sense of self is a hallucination, that leads us right smack into one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in all of science, what's called the hard problem of consciousness. This gets to the very core of what it even means to be alive. So here's the deal with the hard problem. Scientists can literally map your brain. They can watch your neurons fire when you fall in love. They can measure the chemicals. But what they can't explain is the feeling of love itself, the actual experience. That gap between the physical brain and our inner world, that's the hard problem. And this is where Chopra gives his radical answer. He basically flips the whole problem on its head. He says consciousness isn't something the brain makes. Nope. He says consciousness is the foundation of everything, and the physical world, our bodies, the planet, it's all just an experience happening inside that consciousness. And leave it to Hassan to take this massive, mind-bending philosophical idea of oneness and boil it down to a simple, hilarious, and honestly pretty perfect joke. It's a great way to wrap your head around a heavy concept. All right, so if our reality is just one big collective dreamscape, what does that mean for our actual physical bodies? This is where Chopra's ideas get really tangible and, let's be real, really controversial. We're going to look at his famous theories on the mind-body connection, especially when it comes to aging. This is straight out of his blockbuster book from 1993. It's this huge claim that our minds, our consciousness, can actually control the biological process of getting older. It was a game-changer of an idea back then, and it's still pretty wild to hear today. So how can aging possibly be fluid? Well, he says we don't just have one age, we have 5. Chronological age, that's just the calendar, can't change that one. But the others, our biological age, how healthy our cells are, our psychological age, how old we feel, our emotional age, and our spiritual age, he claims all of those are things we can actually control. And of course, he uses himself as Exhibit A. On paper, he's 79 years old, but he claims his biological age is somewhere in his 50s. Emotionally, he says he's a cool 20. And his spiritual age, well, that, according to him, is timeless, infinite. Now, you can imagine ideas this big didn't just stay in books. They've taken him into some really unexpected corners of our culture. So let's look at Chopra's journey through spiritual movements, hanging out with celebrities, and even into the boardrooms of corporate America. You know, he was a huge figure in the Transcendental Meditation, or TM, movement for a while. But he tells Hassan he left because he's just really skeptical of organizations in general. He thinks any organized spirituality, no matter how good the intentions, is at risk of becoming kind of cultish. And then Hassan brings up something pretty strange. It's a practice called yogic flying, and it was tied to a political party that actually spun out of the TM movement.
He even shows a clip of a guy who promises he can make national problems vanish with this technique.
What's so interesting here is Chopra's explanation. He doesn't laugh it off. Instead, he gives this very scientific-sounding breakdown, saying he's done it himself. He describes it as this deep meditative state that causes a physical reaction in your body, which pretty much looks like you're bunny hopping. And this just shows you the insane range of his world. I mean, on one hand, he's at Neverland with Michael Jackson, who he describes as this incredibly fragile soul who would just weep over the world's suffering. And on the other hand, he's teaching leadership courses on LinkedIn to these high-powered execs, helping them find a purpose beyond profits. Okay, so we've talked about cosmic hallucinations, reversing aging, yogic flying, Michael Jackson. What's the bottom line here? What's Chopra's actual practical advice for just trying to live your life in this chaotic modern world? His final advice is pretty stark. He says the world is insane, period. And our natural state is peace. So the only logical thing to do is to emotionally detach from all the craziness. It's not about trying to fix the world. It's about protecting your own inner peace so you don't get sucked into the madness. And after that really profound, heavy piece of wisdom, Hassan, being Hassan, just brings it all crashing back to earth with the most simple, funny, and deeply 21st century question you could possibly ask. And Chopra's reply, it's just 2 words, but it says everything. It's not some mystical answer. It's just a moment of real human connection. And it kind of perfectly captures their whole conversation, this dance between the profound and the playful. And it really leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? Is Chopra a true mystic who has unlocked the universe's secrets? Or is he a master showman who ultimately knows not to take himself too seriously?